Okay, so Canada Suriname played on
Wah,
Friday. I watched it on the phone in a rink, so I didn't get a good chance to really absorb it. I'm going to watch it today. Craig, observations. It was I guess a typical Concacaf tilt from what I understand, and Canada found a way, as they say, and got the job done, as the old cliche in football goes.
Well, as I predicted, it was never going to be easy, although Suriname didn't have a shot on net, so it was a free clean sheet, which is nice for goalkeepers. But overall, it's you got to think of the situation the players are in. There are lots of travel. They're in temperatures that they're not used to recently. Artificial surface that they have. I don't think any of them are playing on regularly. All these factors, as well as the Suriname side, that most of them are from Holland. They're born in the Netherlands, and they're lower divisions, most of them. But they're, like I said before on the podcast, I think before the game, is that all teams are organized these days, and even these smaller countries, with the rule changes in FIFA and being able to get players easier these days to play for countries like that, they can be difficult to handle. So overall, nice finish from Hoylett, fantastic, and Jonathan David comes in with another assist. He's absolutely on fire.
Dubs, I saw, I forget who it was. Was it Ollie Platt? I think it may have been Ollie put.
Yeah, I was going to reference it.
Yeah, with all every goal, 9 goals scored under Jesse Marsh for Canada, right? And everyone involves Jonathan David, I believe, right?
Yeah, 9 goals since Marsh took over as head coach. So 1 to 9 is actually 3 is where he's uninvolved, but everything else is either a goal, an assist, or a forced turnover leading to a goal by one of his teammates. But yeah, he's been absolutely massive. And to Forrest's point about Suriname, like you look at that matchup, and I think we were talking about the aggregate score, and I think we all overestimated Canada and underestimated Suriname, but Forrest drove it home on a couple of podcasts that not to be taken lightly, and Concacaf away is always going to be a challenge. And also when you look at Suriname as a team in their last 17 home games, I saw the stat as well, 11 wins, 4 draws, 2 losses. So it's not just enough to look at anybody, whether you're a pundit or just a casual fan, you look at the rankings and make assumptions. And it's usually you can get, like, you fall into that trap, and it's not a good one to fall into. But I think it was a little bit disjointed. I think you saw Suriname be fearful of Canada's press. Canada never really got to do it, but I mean, they forced Suriname into playing kind of a sloppy game, lots of long balls, lots of direct balls that never really connected, but it also led to Canada not really having much fluidity or much flow. And I mean, it took it to the 82nd minute to get that Hoylett goal. But I think great for David that he keeps kind of establishing himself as kind of a top class striker worldwide, whether you're talking about whether it's for club or for country. But great for Junior Hoylett, who didn't feature because of injury in the summer, but I think is a guy who's beloved, and I think is an important link, I think, for Marsh between sort of that established leadership group and then the youth on this team. And you have a guy like that who's so well respected, and you saw everybody how happy they were, I think, not only to get like everybody just exhaled to get that lead, but that it came through a guy like Junior Hoylett. I think it was really good to see.
Dubs, do you know how Craig could get bored on a clean sheet? Can defenders get bored too a little bit? Even because you're just not.
I never got bored. I could care less whether I had a shot.
You were rolling a joint back there, giving people the wanker sign. You were thinking about how you're going to hook up with Boy George later on that night.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, you say boredom, but it's more about staying engaged.
Yeah,
right?
but that's my point. How hard is that? How hard is it to stay engaged? Because,
it can be challenging for sure. But I mean, that's part of the level that you need to be at if you're going to be elite. That's not only the physical demands or the in-game demands and managing those important moments, but the mental engagement and fortitude that you're staying connected to your teammates. You're kind of staying in your bubble. You're keeping the outside noise out, especially if you're away in Concacaf and everything that can entail. But then also staying connected with your coaches, what they want from you, and tactical changes, things like that, being vocal, talking to your goalkeeper. Like I remember, if I was playing in the back line or playing that deeper lying midfielder role on set pieces, Suriname hit that. I mean, it was off the top of the crossbar, but they still connected on it.
That's right. Yeah, the header.
Like talking to KK or talking to whoever was in net about making sure that they were stay engaged and kind of committed in the moment, which we knew that they would be, but just saying like, we need you in these moments to make sure that can see us through to where we're going to be probably in the other half for the rest of the game. But this is where we need to rely on you and we trust you. And just reminders, not in as many words, but like, let's fucking go, KK. Just making sure, like checking in, right? I think that's important.
Why was Korea KK when she was 1K in her name?
Yeah, that was her mom, I think, gave her that nickname. And then, but it was more, her mom's Jamaican, her dad's, and she spent some time, grew up in Dominica. And it was more like not a KK, which what we shortened it to, like 2-letter Ks, but it was more KAY, KAY.
Oh, okay.
KK. Anyway, and then it just, we didn't really bastardize it, but didn't even think about it. You're like, yeah, KK. But I mean, the gall with you asking about nicknames with all the fucking names you come up with.
That's why I was curious. That's all. I wasn't criticizing. I like the creativity around nicknames. So I was like, wow, KK, 1K, explain to me. Respect. The opposite. So in your face, Dubs. Don't criticize me there.
In your face, Dubsy.
Craig, sorry, you were saying there before I brought up the name issue.
No, Dubs brings up a good point. I mean, no matter how you're dominating a side, as a goalkeeper, you have to think that they're going to have a chance. It just generally that is the case. And so you have to be absolutely tuned in for the entire 90 minutes. So even though Dane Sinclair didn't have anything to do, he would have been probably quite, tired, certainly the next day, because of going through his routine before the game, going through the match itself. And whether you have shots or not, you have to be really focused for the whole 90 minutes.
So as a professional, Craig, you never were thinking, 15 minutes left, we're up 4-0. I wonder what party we're going to tonight. You've never thought, who's going to be in the players' lounge later on? You never thought of that?
I might have.
Because I know when you were on air at Sportsnet, there was a couple of times where I'd be like texting you and you're done work. I go, look, we're getting ready for St. Patty's Day really early. And you're like, I'll pick you up at 1:30, right when you're done. And you were like, yeah. And so I'm not sure how engaged you were with that last half. Yeah.
Can you imagine if there were cell phones back then? I could have been all, hey, Wonger, we're 4-0 up.
It's not the last half, it's the first half too, Wonger. I remember my first time at Sportsnet doing the Premier League games.
Yeah.
And we do our pre-game show, right? And they kick off. I'm like, where's Craig and Dickie? Where are they going? They're going for a fucking coffee. And I'm like, but the game started. And Dan Fernandez goes, don't worry, they'll catch up. And they did. They did. It's funny when you work with someone in that environment, like an ex-player or a coach. And Dubs, you'll know this as an ex-player. Like as myself, I love football, obviously, but I don't watch the game the same way you watch the game. You take so much more from it. So I'm watching a bunch of guys running around the field, a bunch of girls running around the field, right? And I'm trying to come up to something, some topic, some narrative. Whereas, Craig, Dubs, I'm sure you're the same way. Dickie-O as well, would just like be able to take so much from just a small window and watch the right back here, watch this. It's just fascinating to me that you guys don't realize it. You just watch the game so differently to the average Joe. You really do. So I'm like,
I think most people ball watch. When you're watching it,
that's exactly what
right.
it is.
Yeah,
exactly what it is.
You're not watching what's happening around it and the movement and things like that open up space as much as I think ex-players would be.
Well, especially broadcast, watching on television, you're treated to ball watch unless you were playing sports at a young age, right? Like if you weren't a sports person, your whole relationship with sports is through the television, and that's all about ball watching.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you're actually sitting there going, oh, that winger's flying up, or that wide receiver, or that, all that defender's moving up, I got to be aware of it. You don't see it till it's 4 steps, and then they show it and they go, oh, look at the run he made, right? And this amazing run by a wing back, you only see in the goal the last 15 meters, but actually he's run 75 and has seen the play develop. And that's actually, that Sharms talking to Craig and being around Craig, especially specifically at Sportsnet and especially at Sportsnet, he goes, you got to watch this part. And that's kind of where I developed, I might like this game. Because all I was concerned about was, it's a 1-0 game. That's 7-0 on the football field. Or that's 1-0 on in the hockey rink or the ringette rink, right?
Yeah. Even like I think of that amazing goal DeCanio scored at Upton Park back in the day against Wimbledon from across from Trevor Sinclair. I mean, that doesn't happen unless Steve Lomas busts his butt and runs 50 yards, overlaps, takes a defender away, clears some space for Sinclair to actually make the cross to DeCanio. You know, these are the sort of things I think that are really important.
And I think the broadcast quality has helped people see beyond just the ball, to see what's happening around it, and it's the punditry as well, and whether you like it or you don't. But that's an issue in the women's game. Like, in order to be taken seriously, or say like the CPL, when like we're at York and they're filming the opposite side of the pitch, so you're not filming the crowd, or you've got somebody who's on it who's not a soccer person, they're a hockey person, and they're the person who's either producing or has like the lead camera. It makes a difference to your viewing experience. And when I was covering the World Cup, or actually usually any broadcast now, you have the option of having the tactical view. And more often than not, that's what I want to see, because in a shit game, like, you know, to Forrest's point about ball watching, is you look at 1v1 battles, like, or who's most impactful, like who is highly touted or billed going into the game as big players, or I just watch the center midfielder. I mean, that's my bias, but I mean, I'm compiling, I'm somebody who's submitting like my top 100 footballers for The Guardian. And I'm like, okay, I want to say objective. And then I'm like, you know what? Fuck objective. Everybody else is going in here with a heavy bias. I'm going in, they're asking me for my opinion. Like, fuck objectivity. I mean, obviously informed, but like my bias, like that's why people want to hear our voices, is because of your experience, and that's your bias. So it's for better, for worse. But anyway, so I'll just watch a player. And then oftentimes if there's a lack of narrative, or there's a lack of an angle for halftime, you can find it just in watching a player who is key to you, either because you played it or you see them as being influential or impactful to the result. But I wanted to go back just to wrap up on goalkeeping for us. Like, I think set pieces and how crucial they are, not only to tournament football, but just to the kind of modern game. As a player, the way you address that, and oftentimes the way you have specific staff assigned to set pieces, and how they can like really move the needle for the good or for the bad, that to me is maybe a taste, as close as I'm going to get to a goalkeeper's mentality, of how engaged you have to be in the moment to either defend or to attack, and to be a difference maker on a set piece.
Yeah.
Do you think that's fair?
I think so. And defending set pieces is very much a group deal as well. And defenders that are willing to attack the ball. And if you know that's the case, then there's certain areas that you might not want to come, because you know that defender is going to be able to be doing his job brilliantly well to clear it.
Craig, did you prefer zonal or man-to-man?
Man-to-man. Yeah. You would have part zonal sometimes. I didn't mind that. Somebody would be standing in the front post, for instance. You know what's going on. You know what they like to do. Their tendencies to whip one into the near post, look for second phases. That can give you a bit of a jump on your decision making. I hated it when people blocked you out. Not great.
What about you, Dubs? Like, did you, when you were in that defensive formation, zonal, man-to-man, or what would you call it in women's soccer? Woman to woman?
Player to player?
Yeah, player to player, yeah.
It would depend. I think I preferred man-to-man, because then like just the onus was on you to win that matchup. But it usually ended up being a little bit of a hybrid. Even if you saw it as being a strict man-to-man, you would have players on posts, or you'd have somebody standing on the 6 and helping out the goalkeeper, and then everybody else would be man-to-man. So if you really looked at it, it was probably more of a hybrid, which is I think what you see now more often than not.
And that's
the
when you need
people
communication.
on the posts have an important job, and I think so. I've seen it many times where they think it's a bit of a rest for them. They're hugging the post and they're like, "Oh, this is no responsibility on me," and then one gets knocked their way and somehow they manage to let it go through their feet or something. You're just like, you were not focused, you were not tuned in, you were taking a break, and, you know. Because I know if they're tuned in, those two people on the post, I know that that gives me some leeway too. It makes the net a little bit smaller.
Do you think Danes earned the start on Tuesday despite not making one save?
Well,
You have to keep him in there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Does he deserve a 10 or a 1 out of 10? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I honestly don't think. I think that Max will play on Tuesday would be my bet, but obviously did nothing wrong. But I would expect that the other goalkeepers will have an opportunity.
We did our over-unders right on Friday as far as our thoughts on the overall aggregate scoreline. Mine was 8. Which doesn't look good right now. Craig, I think you had 4?
4-1?
4-1, I think. Yeah.
4-1. That's looking pretty good. Dubs, do you remember yours?
5-1.
5-1. Okay. Wonga?
9-0. They have to score 8 tonight at
Still possible.
Tuesday night at BMO. So hey, crossing fingers.
Yeah, I think it'll be a much different match on Tuesday, though. I think Canada will score a few goals.
Yeah,
I hope so. I was going to ask you guys if you thought that Canada's lack of clinical edge, and you got to think Oluwaseun, like he's just can't buy a goal for Canada, right? Like just stake bet. But if that one goes in, does it allow then Jesse Marsh to have almost that built-in accelerant so that he can continue to progress and build the depth in his squad, because it allows him more flexibility? He can maybe rotate a little bit more than he did. Right?
Yeah.
Like if they put some of those chances away, then you've got that cushion, and then you think, okay, like let's not wholesale change, but let's get a lot more subs in. Let's get Tejan a little bit more minutes than he got. You know, it gives you more flexibility in the second half.
Yeah, no, good point. Yeah, they got to take this very seriously, at least until they fill the net before halftime, if that's the case.
I get that feeling that once Oluwaseun gets his first international goal, they're going to start flowing. I just have that feeling. That said, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Kyle start on Tuesday.
Yeah, because he was carrying a knock, right?
Yeah. So a couple of days off, or rested anyway.
You know who was carrying a knock? Aguirre for the head coach of Mexico. Aguirre, sorry. Aguirre for Mexico. He was carrying a knock. Fucking Honduras, eh? Throwing bottles.
Though. Like he just walked. He doesn't even flinch.
Good for him.
Is it a beer? It's like that bottle hits him. Yeah. And then it's like 2 seconds later when he's talking to some other people, then the blood really starts to flow, and then guys are like trying to rub it off his face. I'm like, maybe don't do that.
Yeah, the physio was trying to sort him out while he was going around shaking everybody's hands. Yeah, he took it very well.
I want to keep that video on my phone. Every time some idiot comes to me and mentions how soccer players are wimps, I want to show them that. Say, yeah, well, how are your coaches, huh?
Well, if he was a player during the game, he would have hit the deck.
I know.